Sometimes in history, a cultivation world that was called the game suddenly appears, and players enter this cultivation world to battle with monsters and raise their abilities. At the same time, they are allowed to take the rewards of their adventure in the cultivation world and their cultivation to the real world for them to sell for profit. It is going all well and profitable until a disaster comes upon them. Monsters from the cultivation world use the opening to the real world as their means of passage, and they enter the world. Ever since monsters invaded the real world, the war between humans and monsters become unending. The monsters are more powerful and cities fall into succession. The few remaining survivors of these attacks were using their last energy to defend the last city. Unfortunately, even the last city is about to collapse, and if things continue the way it is going, the human race is doomed. As they try their best to defend the last city, they see a weird creature. It is the final demon lord. They are facing too many monsters, and it is ridiculous that it is in that situation that the final demon lord has also appeared to fight them. Seeing what is happening, the sword immortal, Gu Qingshan, declares that there is just one solution left for them all in that situation, and the solution is that they should all move together like perish together. The skill he wants to use is called Return Together, and it will destroy the whole world, including all the monsters. He feels that's the only thing left, but the warriors scream at him to stop. They tell him that if he uses Return Together as he intends to do, he will also die, and he is the last hope of humanity, so if he dies, humanity is gone. He doesn't accept their suggestion. He feels they do not have any other opinion, and that sword is the only thing that can end the karma they are all experiencing. They decide that they will use their remaining spirit power to support him, and everything is left to him at that point. Gu Qingshan is determined that it is about time that the war and suffering they have experienced till that point end, and there is no point fighting again. He runs there, and he uses End Together to defeat the demon. After that great duel, the last immortal one of the human race, Gu, fell. The relentless battle between humans and demons ended in the defeat of the human race, and the present world start to enter a state of destruction. Gu, who had killed the final demon lord, earned himself a chance at resurrection. Sometimes later, a man follows his master to the pit of dead people. When they arrive, he wonders why they are trying to search the pit of dead people, saying that there may be monsters around. But his master tells him that he should check around the pit to see if any of their fish slip through. He tells the man that there are always several good things in the dead, and they just need to stab the dead one another time for them to get the fortune in them. He continues stabbing the dead and taking the things he finds until he meets the corpse of Gu. He sees the short sword which Gu Qingshan had used to defeat the final demon lord on his hand, and he assumes that the sword isn't common and he will like to take it. Instead of taking it immediately, he decides to stab the corpse again before taking it. But before he succeeds in doing that, Gu Qingshan wakes up and stabs him. The servant is surprised that a dead person has just woken up. He calls Gu Qingshan a monster, but Gu Qingshan doesn't even know where he is. Gu Qingshan asks the man where he is and who they are. He clearly remembers that he has persisted after he defeated the final demon lord. The master turns into a demon, and he attacks Gu. He pushes Gu Qingshan to the floor with such huge strength. But Gu Qingshan declares to him that he isn't to be killed. Gu Qingshan kills him, although he also gets slightly injured. He stabs the demon again, then he gets enough time to think of what is happening to him. He looks at the battlefield and also the person that rose from death. He wonders if it means that the place isn't the present world but the cultivation world inside the game. If it's the cultivation world, then the system has to be there, so he tries to find the system. He calls for the system, but he gets no response. The servant is scared. He lies on the floor and asks Gu Qingshan if he is a human or a ghost. But Gu Qingshan looks at him ridiculously, telling him that if he had killed thousands of monsters, he wouldn't be asking such a question. The man insists on knowing who he is and says he wants to see the badge on his waist. That's when Gu Qingshan realizes that he actually has a badge on his waist. He checks it, and he sees that it is the badge from the game Cultivation, and it's the previous design. When he shows the man sees the tag Zyoki Camp on it, and he admits that he had made a mistake and it's a misunderstanding. He says he has realized that Gu Qingshan is his brother from Zyoki's camp. He tells Gu Qingshan that it is dangerous for them to remain there and Gu Qingshan should follow him to the camp. Gu Qingshan still doesn't understand what is happening. He sees the armor the people are using, and he recognizes it as the leather armor which was in vogue 10 years before he had died. He asks the man what year they are in, and the man tells him they are in the 681st year of Yongping. That was exactly 10 years ago in the game Cultivation world. After all his call on the system, he eventually gets a system notification. The system tells him the present year that they are in is confirmed as the last year of Yongping. The system shows a result that he has successfully escaped from the apocalypse. His identity has been reset successfully, and his current identity is Vanguard Army Soldier Gu Kingshan of Zioki Camp of the Human Race. He hasn't understood what is happening to him fully. The system notifies him that the God of War system was successful, and he can now restart his path of adventure. He eventually understands that he has been reborn. He is now the System War God, but he doesn't really know what he should do with the new chance at life given to him. He stands there thinking, and he hears the noise of the man. The man screams that a monster has appeared to them and they are doomed, but he calms the man down, telling him that it is just a normal monster and he can handle it. He jumps at the monster with the hope of using his sword to defeat it, but he comes to the realization that his sword can't be used. He figures that there is no chance that he can win that monster if he keeps up with straightforward attacks, and the only way he can win is by using his experience. He tries to remember what type of monster it is and if the monster has a vital point. He remembers that the monster's vital point is in his throat, and he directs his attacks there and eventually kills the monster. Looking at it, he says he thinks they are in the fallen human territory. He looks ahead, and he sees several monsters. He realizes that they are all coming because they have been attracted to the smell of blood from the pit of dead people. The numbers of monsters that are coming right at him are very much, and he remembers it was really difficult for him to defeat one monster, and there is no way he can succeed in dealing with tens of them at once. So his only solution is that they run away. He asks the man if there is any hiding place for them, and the man describes a barracks with a concealment magic formation where they can hide, and the barracks are not too far from them. They run there, and when they arrive, they run into the barracks. It's a camp with fire, and as they enter, the monsters no longer see them, so they declare that they are safe inside the camp. The man tells him that the camp has a concealment magic formation, and there is no way the monsters can find them there. However, he confesses to the man that when they entered the camp, he felt a tremor in the magic formation, and he fears that the magic formation can't hold them for too long. The man is scared. He asks him what they can do, and he tells the man that if there are spirit stones, then the magic formation will hold on for a long. The man immediately gets into action. He starts going around the camp to search if there are spirit stones around so they can use them for their protection. Gu Kingshan immediately starts regretting his reincarnation. He remembers that he has perished with the final demon lord a moment again, which seems to be his previous life. In his previous life, people thought the cultivation game was a virtual game, and it was only after the monsters from the cultivation world attacked their world that they realized that the cultivation world was real and it truly existed. But by the time they figured that, it was too late for them. By then, the outcome of the monsters attacking and destroying the human world had been finalized. Now the fact that he has been reborn into the cultivation world 10 years into the past means that he still has a chance to stop the annihilation of the human race. But that's a later plan because in that position that he is, he has to survive first. He looks at his sword and remembers that when he was trying to kill the monster, he couldn't use his sword. He can't continue like that for him in the long run, and he needs to find a solution. He remembers the warlord system, and he opens his system. He looks at it and sees that it is completely different from one of the games in his previous life. He decides that he can find a solution to that later, and the most important thing at that moment is for him to find a way to survive. The system shows him a notification about that he is in his first state of Kai condensation. He figures that is the reason he is feeling so weak, and it is because he can only feel or use the spirit power at a low degree. He gets another system notification that he has successfully activated the War God operation screen. The system asks him if he wants to activate the first function, and he clicks on activate. He sees that the War God skill can directly comprehend the move of the previous holders of a weapon through physical touching of the weapon. However, comprehension of such moves requires him to spend a certain amount of soul power. He completely understands that skill, but there is no sword for him to test it. He holds a blade, and the system shows him information about the former holders of the blade. That doesn't make it easy for him to think of the idea of fighting a bunch of monsters. He still feels it is difficult for him to fight just a monster, and it will surely be suicide for him if he faces a bunch of monsters. He decides that he will rely on ranging attacks to kill the monsters and raise his cultivation level first. He holds another weapon, and the system shows him 4 ways in which the weapon has been used. He is impressed by the second way, and he comments that the second move seems to be very powerful, but the amount of soul power he will need to use that move exceeds his maximum limit. So he decides to learn 2 other means. Immediately he learns it, he comprehends it. He decides to use the bow skills he had just learned in action. He shoots the bow at a tree, and he feels that the accuracy of the bow is okay, but it lacks power. He wonders if it will become more powerful if he adds spirit power to it, and he does that. This time, the bow destroys the tree. He sees that the 2 moves he has learned, which are the stabilizing and consecutive shooting, aren't too bad. He feels it looks like it will be possible for him to rely on the abilities of the war god system to kill the low-class monsters that are outside the camp. He decides to figure out what will happen later, and he hears a loud noise. He at first assumes it is an earthquake but figures the noise is coming from outside the camp. He goes nearer and sees that a monster called the Faceless Giant has gained entrance into the camp. He recalls that the first time a monster of that kind appeared was during the year players first entered the cultivation world, so he doesn't understand why the creature is appearing now. He wonders if something different from the previous timeline occurred. The other man arrives after his search for the stone. He sees the monster, and he is terrified because he doesn't know what it is. Gu Qingshan tells him that the creature is a monster of the nascent soul stage, and it is named the Faceless Giant. They see the monster coming over, and the man is sure that they are done for, and this time around, there is no way they can survive from that monster. Although Gu Qingshan is also overwhelmed, he begs the man not to panic and says they won't die. They watch as the monster changes its direction. They realize that the monster isn't coming after them after all. However, although they are saved from that great monster, it isn't the end of the issue because the camp begins to crack. The man asks Gu Qingshan if the magic formation has been damaged and wonders what is happening. Gu Qingshan figures that the tremor that had just occurred depleted the concealment formation's spirit power. As a result, their location is exposed and monsters are being attracted to them. If it goes on, more and more monsters will come to them, so Gu Qingshan decides he will try to get rid of the monsters there first. He tells the man to hurry up and charge up the formation with the spirit stones while he tries to kill the monsters there. He uses the skill called Stabilize, and he shoots arrows at the monsters. The ranged attacks he is sending at them seem suitable for him to deal with monsters like them. He changes to another skill called Consecutive Shooting and continues. Since he has killed more monsters, his experience bar gets filled. The system notifies him that his current experience points are now 5 out of 5, and his strength is raised to the second stage of Kai Condensation, and as a reward, his skill, Stabilize, had a successful breakthrough and it had leveled up to Secure. He is glad about that because the growth type of skills are quite suitable for his current situation, and he can slowly level up that way. However, what worries him the most isn't his type of skill. It's actually the fact that the Faceless Giant appeared. The man eventually arranges the stone and comes to give Gu Qingshan feedback. He hopes that the concealment formation magic will last them a little longer, but Gu Qingshan tells him it isn't that simple. The man wonders if the Faceless Giant hasn't left, and he asks Gu Qingshan what he is still worried about. So Gu Qingshan informs him that the Faceless Giant wouldn't have appeared alone. There is a high chance that there will be high-tier soldiers following it. Unfortunately, the concealment formation can't block high-tier monsters. The Faceless Giant that had visited should have discovered them, but he was just indifferent about attacking them, which is why they are still safe. He feels like something big is about to happen, and that thing that wants to happen doesn't feel like a positive one. He remains at that camp with that man throughout the night, although he remains on guard and ensures he checks everywhere. While watching, he sees that his fear is coming into reality as the high-tier monsters arrive. The Steel Blood Demon and the evil Ghost Fire Snake arrive. He doesn't go to disturb them, but he watches them from afar, and he views that they are in a hurry to go somewhere. The two monsters also walk away, and he sees they are traveling in the same direction as the Faceless Giant. He hides from them and tells the man that the monsters are high-tier monsters, but he doesn't know where exactly they are going to. The man sees something coming from the sky and calls Gu's attention to it. The creature falls into their camp, claiming that he is tired and he was almost caught up. The figure it is a bird, but when the bird sees them, he is also scared. He knows how terrible humans can be and he screams. The bird alerts his survival mode. He starts running, saying that he has seen humans and they will kill him. The man tells Gu Qingshan that the bird will run off, but Gu Qingshan doesn't want to allow that kind of intelligent type monster to run away. He uses his advanced skill called Secure, and he shoots his arrow at the bird. He hits the bird, who lies helplessly. Gu Qingshan goes nearer to the bird and finds a chip. He wonders what it is, and when he opens it, he finds some information. In the chip, he finds out that the target is continuing to move toward the South Command. He finds some other information in it, and he figures the chip is a demonic army's secret dispatch command. The bird is a messenger bird. He reads what the demonic army has sent, and he wonders if they are about to start a war. That doesn't seem to be the case in his previous life. He remembers every battle of the cultivation world in his previous life, and there wasn't a battle between the human race and the monsters in the early days. Although it has not become a battle, he views that they are mobilizing their kind of army, and wonders if they are going for a decapitation strike to get rid of their leader. He starts thinking about the people in history who were killed through a sneak attacks by monsters. He asks the man beside him what day they are, and the man tells him it's June 7th. He eventually remembers what he is missing. He remembers that the Sacred Sect Supreme Elder, Grand Master of Formation, Jing Sunjai, and Celestial Sect, Holy Celestial Maiden Ning Yuchen, are both to die in a few days, and they are both to top their cultivators. Their strength was top tier, and if they didn't die, the human race might not have been obliterated by the apocalypse. He wishes he can do something to stop the doom coming by. But with his current cultivation level, it is probably going to be difficult for him to even get near those monsters. He has a lot of things he had to change, not only the apocalypse. He gets a notification that he has spent 24 hours in the cultivation world, and he has to return to his present world. The system tells him that all his equipment has been stored inside the system's inventory, and they can be taken out when he needs it, so the system initiates his return to the real world, and he sees himself going back to the world. He returns to the Free Federation named the Changning Federation. He looks at the environment he has returned to, and it looks like his high school prom day. He is also dressed in ceremonial wear like the other students, and he realizes that he has returned to the world before destruction. He hears a voice calling out for him behind him, and before turning, he tries to think of whose voice it is. It's Zuer. She is his high school classmate, 9th Prefecture Noble, Su family's eldest granddaughter, Su Zuer. She tells him that his brother, Zhang Yi, told her he has something to say to her. Zhang Yi, Gu's friend, is also there. He reaffirms that he knows Gu Qingshan has something to tell Zuer. All the students around concentrate their attention on what is happening in their circle. They all rumor that Gu Qingshan wants to confess his feelings to Zuer. At the same time, some part of them feel that it is impossible, but it's going to be a good show, so they want to watch it. He looks at Zhang Yi with eyes of betrayal. He remembers that in his previous life, Zhang Yi stabbed him with a ring containing aphrodisiac poison when he was confessing, thereby causing him to do perverted things to Zuer. Because of that, he offended the Su family, and there was no place for him to gain a foothold in the Free Federation. Left with no other choice, he left for the Fuxi Empire, and it was only when the cultivation world and the present world connected that he had the chance to return and turn things around. He decides that he won't repeat the same mistake in this life. Zhang Yi keeps motivating him to confess his feelings. He tells him that he doesn't need to be shy and he should talk. He starts talking. All the students call each other that the show is starting, and they all gather, however, contrary to what they have all thought he would say. He tells her he only wanted to inform her that if she has time, she should come over to his house to eat a meal so he can show her his cooking skills. All the students are disappointed. They say that his confession is boring, and Zuer is also expecting a better confession, so she asks him if the only thing he wants to tell her is to invite her for a meal and nothing else. He insists he has nothing else to say to her, and it is only for a meal. Zhang Yi confronts him. He claims that Gu Qingshan had told him he wants to confess his feelings to Su Zuer, but Gu Qingshan denies it. He claims Zhang Yi should stop with those jokes as he doesn't intend to do anything like that. Zhang Yi is angry that the situation is not going the way he had expected and things are different from his plans, so he feels it's time he gets serious. He addresses Gu Qingshan that he is dropping the chain at a very critical period, and as Gu's friend, he will help him out. Just as he is about to throw the aphrodisiac at Gu Qingshan holds his hands. He screams at Gu, asking him what he is doing, but Gu Qingshan claims the question should be directed to Zhang Yi and not him. He holds Zhang Yi's hands and twists him to the ground to collect the pill. He asks him what he intends to use that pill for, and when Zhang Yi realizes that he has been caught, he begs Gu Qingshan not to misunderstand his action. He says that it's just a normal ring and there is nothing attached to it. Holding the ring in his hand, Gu Qingshan remembers that in his previous life, he didn't know who had the intention to harm him, but in this life, he may be able to use the Su family guard to help him with his mission. He asks Zhang Yi to confess and tells him that if he doesn't confess, then he shouldn't blame him or call him harsh for whatever he does. He calls Sui, who is actually Su Zuer's bodyguard. She angrily answers his call but reminds him that she had told him that he should only beacon on her when Su Zuer is in danger. He gives a ring to her and tells her to look at it. The older bodyguard, Su Lai, asks her what the ring is for. She tells them there is a very violent aphrodisiac on the ring. Su Zuer is shocked as to how things have gone. Gu Qingshan tells them that although he doesn't know the reason, there is only one thing that can be verified, which is that someone wants Zuer and himself to be humiliated. But he wouldn't help them by mentioning the person, and the two bodyguards should do justice to the situation. Seeing that things haven't gone as he had intended, Zhang Yi starts to run. Both Sui and Su Lai don't look like they will let him go with what he had done. Su Lai turns invisible, and he stands in front of Zhang Yi, telling him that life isn't hard and he should enter a sweet dark dream. He convinces him that as long as he speaks the secret in his heart, he can satisfy his desires. He uses magic to torture Zhang Yi into a confession. Gu Qingshan hasn't seen that skill before, and he asks if it is the Sky Select ability. Sui replies affirmatively, and she tells him that Su Lai is a Sky Select and he has the Sky Select ability that hypnotizes people. The skies select are professionals who have unique abilities in the present world and then cannot rely on cultivation to awaken an ability. Su Lai asks Zhang Yi who intends to harm Zhu, and Zhang Yi says he doesn't know. He claims the person used an anonymous online account, and he is only taking the business to make money. Gu Qingshan realizes that someone is instructing his friend to harm him. Su Lai returns and tells them Zhang Yi really doesn't know anything about what is happening. Zhang Yi also tries to convince Gu Qingshan to believe him. He begs him to take account of their many years of friendship and spare his life. He crawls towards Gu Qingshan and begs him to spare his life. However, Gu Qingshan refuses. He knows how much the issue would have affected his life if Zhang Yi had succeeded, so he hits him and tells him it is time for their friendship to die. He begs Su Yi that he would like her to investigate the person behind that attempt. But she tells him that he doesn't need to tell her that, as it is her major responsibility to protect Zhu. Zhu goes to meet him, and she appreciates him for protecting her reputation. But he tells her that she doesn't need to thank him because he is doing it for himself. She feels he is different, and she tells him that she feels something is different about him. He checks his system and sees the system is still there and his hourglass has restarted again, so it looks like he will return to the cultivation world again after a while. He still doesn't know the reason the monsters in the cultivation world are taking action, and someone also wants to instruct Zhang Yi to trouble him, but he has settled that. Although he doesn't know the reason, but his war god system seems to be able to allow him to enter the cultivation world and the present world. But since it is like that, he should take advantage of the system to prepare for and stop the apocalypse. Outside a conference hall at the Chang'an Federation, Su Lai and Su Yo walk with Zhang Yi, who keeps begging them that he will never do that again and that they should let him go. Gu Qingshan follows them as they take the plane back, and before leaving, Zhu bids him goodbye and tells him they will meet again. He looks at his friend as he leaves with them, and he fears that Zhang Yi's repercussions will probably be worse than the ones he had experienced in his previous life. He bids them goodbye and watches as the plane leaves. His intention at that point is to go home and rest. He has left his little house for so many years, and now he feels like he misses his home. He sees a flying shuttle in the sky, and he watches it as it lands. He sees that it is the 9th Perfection Nai family's flying shuttle. A messenger comes out of the shuttle and addresses him. He tells him that his family's young master is inviting Gu Qingshan to enter the shuttle and speak with him. As Gu Qingshan tries to enter the shuttle, he wonders why Nai family's young master will want to talk to him, and he remembers that even in his past life, they have no relations. He enters the shuttle, and the messenger welcomes him and takes him to the young master. He gets there and says he doesn't know why President Nai will be asking for him. The young master of the Nai family is Changning's elite private high school council president, Nai Yun. He calls Gu Qingshan a top student. He reads out all of Gu's accomplishments from the beginning mech-8tonics full point, to photo technology full point, to battleship navigation full point, and even a full point in mecha dynamics. Despite being the best in all of these areas, he is also a distinguished member of the Su family's steel armor tech company. He says an ordinary person can't attain these kind of accomplishment, and even a woman like Su Zhu may feel goodwill toward him. He continues and says that, however, every powerful family in the Federation wants to marry Su Zhu, so a person of a poor background like Gu Qingshan shouldn't be tempted by Zhu. But Gu Qingshan asks him what he thinks will happen if he is tempted. He tells Gu Qingshan that if he is tempted by Zhu, his end result will be very terrible and it may even threaten his life. He realizes that his relationship with Su Zhu will affect other people's interest, and he concludes that they were probably the ones who used poison in his previous one. Nai Yun asks him what he is going to do, but Gu Qingshan tells him that if he likes Zhu, then he should go and pursue her. However, he doesn't have any reason to ask him what he is doing to do because whatever he does is his concern and it doesn't concern Nai Yun. Gu Qingshan turns around and attempts to leave the shuttle. Nai Yun is angry at Gu, and he asks his servant how are the plans he has made are. His servant reassures him that every plan they have made is arranged. His plan is that within an hour, Gu Qingshan will die in an accident. Gu Qingshan passes through the slums thinking about his plans to save the world. He sees that there is only 1 year left before the cultivation world arrives in their world, and he needs to rely on the system to raise his power as quickly as possible. He now has 2 worries, and now apart from facing the apocalypse, he now has to be careful of the malicious wealthy children who are threatened by his existence. As he walks, some gang stops him. A man bumps into him and brings out a knife. Despite the fact that it was the man who had bumped into him, the man accuses him of bumping into him. He calls him a little brat, asking him if he wants to leave after bumping into him. The man tries to attack him with the blade, and he sees that the blade is fierce. He says that the man is defiantly not a normal thug, and the man was probably sent after him on purpose. The man tries to stab him, but he dodges the attack and attacks the man from behind. Luckily, his spirit power can still be used. It looks like his cultivation from the cultivation world can be brought to the real world. The others realize that the boy they are there to kill isn't as weak as every normal kid, and they call each other to come together so they can bring Gu Qingshan down together. Gu Qingshan sees he is a great risk, and these thugs are even with guns. He confirms his assumption that they aren't ordinary people, but since things have turned like that for him, he tells them they shouldn't blame him if he becomes ruthless with them. He brings out his arrow from the other world, and as they attack him with guns, he attacks them with arrows. The fight ends as fast as it starts, he kills them, and the last survivor realizes he would also die, so he begs Gu Qingshan to spare him. Gu Qingshan takes his arrow closer to his eyes and asks him to confess about who sent them to him. The boy tells him it is the Nai family's fierce tiger that has hired them. Even Gu Qingshan had expected that it would be Nai Yun's handiwork. The boy advises Gu Qingshan that the fierce tiger is a martial master and he is definitely not a match for the fierce tiger, so he should run. Gu Qingshan considers if the martial master is going to be a threat to him. He feels that if he can use his sword skill from his previous life to the battle, then no opponent can be an issue to him. He tries to remember some things, but with every attempt he makes to remember it, his head hurts. He wonders why he can't remember, and he asks the system if he is the one that sealed his memory. The system replies and tells him that he is yet to break away from the Void's surveillance. It is difficult for them to predict what will occur once they discover them. He asks the system when he will be able to restore his memories, and the system tells him that he needs to transmigrate to the cultivation about 1 or 2 times more. He decides that he can only take one step at a time. He knows that although Nai Yun has failed in his attack this time, he won't give up. He will definitely send more people after him, and since he can't use his sword skill, then he will use the War God skill that comes from the system to fight against all the enemies Nai Yun sends against him. Meanwhile, the fierce tiger has assumed that his thugs would have killed Gu, so he says that he is sure his arrangement for that night was memorable for Gu. Gu Qingshan addresses the last survivor of the group. He tells him that since the person who paid them to kill him is called Fierce Tiger, he would like to talk with the Fierce Tiger. The boy takes his phone and calls the Fierce Tiger, and he gives the phone to Gu. The Fierce Tiger assumes that the men have killed Gu, so he asks his men how the extermination had gone. But when he hears Gu's voice on the phone, he rightly figures that his extermination has failed. Gu Qingshan tells him that he is still alive. The Fierce Tiger says he had not expected that Gu Qingshan would have the audacity to initiate a conversation with him. He says that even if Gu Qingshan didn't contact him to inform him that he was alive, he would have still found out Gu Qingshan was alive, and he would find him and kill him. Since that seems to be the case, Gu Qingshan tells him that he will give him a chance. He says the Fierce Tiger should know where he lives, and he will wait for the Fierce Tiger at home. He ends the call, breaks the phone, and decides to go home. His plan changes. He figures that if he wants to be at peace to fight and pretend the apocalypse, he needs to first get rid of the stupid nobles first. He tells the last survivor that he can leave, and the boy is so glad that he doesn't want to kill him. He walks away and tells him that he has done all the things he asked for, so the boy has won his life back, and he should return home. The boy cries and appreciates him. Meanwhile, Nai Yun is at the Changning Casino, and the casino master informs him that he won't be able to wager against the girl Nai Yun wants him to wager against. His reason is that the girl is their headliner, and he can't bear to wager against her. He begs Nai Yun to please change the girl, but Nai Yun asks him if he is disobeying him because of just a headliner. He asks if the casino master can afford to offend him for a headliner, but the casino master claims that isn't what he means. In the midst of that conversation, the Fierce Tiger, who is the personal side of the Nai family, he is a martial master, as the thug has said, and he comes to meet Nai Yun, informing him that he has failed the task Nai Yun gave him. He tells Nai Yun that Gu Qingshan has also sent them a provoking message. Nai Yun yells and gets angry at the Fierce Tiger. He asks him if he hadn't reassured him that there wouldn't be any problem in executing the task. The man apologizes. He says that he will personally go to get rid of Gu Qingshan immediately. Nai Yun gets more angry at Gu Qingshan and says Gu Qingshan knows how to irritate people. Nai Yun tells the casino store owner that they can bet on something more interesting. He claims that Fierce Tiger is going to kill Gu, and he is betting that Gu Qingshan will surely die that night. The casino store owner reminds Nai Yun that his subordinate is a martial master, and killing a poor student like Gi is actually a very easy task for the Fierce Tiger, and it is like lifting a finger, so the gamble doesn't seem to be fair. However, the young headliner at the casino asks her master to bet on the boy. Her master asks her what will happen if they lose, but she says that if they lose, then they will kill all the members of the Nai family, give up on their mission, and return home. She claims she is sick of that boring place already. Gu Qingshan stays at the slum, and the Fierce Tiger arrives at the slum. He goes to the front of Gu Qingshan's room 2207. He breaks the door and enters into the house, telling Gu Qingshan that he is around. He feels Gu Qingshan is hiding and asks Gu Qingshan how much longer he thinks he can hide. Gu Qingshan attacks him with a bow from behind. He isn't aware of the attack, and he sees that the impact may be brutal. He turns and holds the arrow, but he is weak. He sees that it is a bow. He successfully blocks the arrow, and Gu Qingshan commends him. He claims that what the Fierce Master has done is expected of a martial master. He asks the Fierce Tiger if he feels he can also lock the second arrow. If he blocks the second, what about the third? As the Fierce Tiger keeps blocking each arrow, Gu Qingshan keeps firing. He hides behind the chair, and he wonders how a poor student like Gu Qingshan could have access to such a powerful archery skill. Whereas at the casino, they watch how the battle is going, and the casino owner is shocked that Gu Qingshan can actually use a bow to suppress a martial master. He wonders who Gu Qingshan is. Naiyun sees that the game isn't going the way he wants. He screams at the Fierce Tiger, asking him what he is doing and telling him to quickly kill Gu Qingshan for him. The Fierce Tiger hears his master's command. He tells Naiyun that he will do as he had commanded, and he comes out of his hiding place. He changes to his real power and his strength increases. Gu Qingshan watches this and asks him if that is indeed his real power. The Fierce Tiger jumps at Gu. He laughs at Gu, asking if Gu Qingshan has used all his arrows up, and says it is his turn to fight now. He jumps ahead and sees a good opportunity to attack Gu. He tries to hit Gu, and although Gu Qingshan successfully escapes it, he realizes that the Fierce Master's strength is unexpected. The Fierce Master goes for his second attack, telling Gu Qingshan that he is dead for sure. He tells Gu Qingshan that without the bow, the only thing Gu Qingshan can do against him is hiding. But Gu Qingshan fights back. He asks the Fierce Tiger, who made the assumption that the only thing he can do is hide. He hits the Fierce Master, who screams and spills blood. He is now in his second stage of Kai condensation, and his power is about the same as the world's martial master. But the spiritual power of the cultivation world is stronger than that of the power of the world, so that the reason he had the power to suppress the Fierce Tiger. He tells the Fierce Tiger that he doesn't have the time to deal with him anymore and their fight should end. The Fierce Tiger carries a brick. He brags that he wouldn't give Gu Qingshan a chance to make his move. Gu Qingshan activates his skill called Secure, and he holds 3 arrows in his hands with his bow. He shoots the arrow at the Fierce Tiger, who can't believe what is coming at him. The arrow pierces into his body. The Fierce Tiger falls off and dies after the attack. Naiyun is still controlling a shuttle outside the building, and Gu Qingshan also notices that there is a shuttle outside his building. He uses the opening in the building to check the sky, and he shoots his arrow at the shuttle. Naiyun keeps watching the game at the casino, and he is scared. The casino owner tells him that his mood is not good and they should call off the gamble, but Naiyun refuses to accept. He says that the casino owner can think of accepting defeat, but he, Naiyun, has never lost, and he can't afford to lose. He leaves the casino, telling them that they are lucky that time around, but they won't be that lucky when he next visits the casino. The headliner says that Naiyun doesn't know how high the sky is and how thick the ground is. She wonders if he doesn't know that although he lost the gamble, he saved his own life. The casino owner bows to her. It turns out he is the first guard of the eldest princess, Top Hacker. His real name is Feng Haod. Feng reminds the lady, who turns out to be the eldest princess of the St. Ulanka Empire, the Queen of the Apocalypse, Anna Medisai, that they are at the Free Federation to search for talents, so she should retrain herself during their mission. She is so tired of hiding her identity, and she says it is really a troublesome thing for her. She asks him not to talk about the foolish issue again, and she asks what he thinks about the strength of Gu. He insists that Gu's strength is actually ordinary and he is barely above a martial master. However, he feels Gu's way of fighting is very unique, and he wonders if Gu Qingshan has some kind of unknown ability. She commands him to search for Gu's data, and he does as commanded. He comments that they have an indeed trash firewall system, and the Free Federation doesn't care about its talents at all. When the system brings out Gu's portal, he sees that Gu Qingshan is also a mecha researcher. He calls out for Anna and informs her that Gu Qingshan is also a mecha researcher. She feels his stats are so interesting, and she feels they need to find a way to get close to Gu. Later, at the Changning Metal Battle Armor R&D department, Gu Qingshan enters, and he does his iris scan. The scan welcomes him to the department and calls out his serial number, which is 41,157. He steps into the research room and remembers that in his previous life, before he transmigrated, the mecha technology was a lot better than it is now. He thinks that if he can take advantage of the mecha technology to design stronger mecha armor, it will be very helpful for them in countering the apocalypse. He has a lot of technologies in his head, and he decides he should confirm that afterward. He opens a compartment of the office that leads to the residential areas. He wants to remain there for a while because he believes that if he hides there, the people of Nai's family won't bother to him for a while. He enters the residential area and he puts in his fingerprint. The system recognizes his print and welcomes him back to the house. He enters the room, drops his clothes, and he perceives some smell. He sees that there are strands of gas from the underworld in the air. He checks outside, and he sees that the signs of the apocalypse have already appeared, and he has not much time left. He decides that he will return to the cultivation world the following day, and he will use the remaining time he has left to train his cultivation. He sits there until his system eventually notifies him that he has stayed in the present world for 24 hours, and he can now return to the cultivation world. He immediately disappears and finds himself in the cultivation world. He is inside the camp with the same man, and the man asks him if he is alright. The man asks him why he is spacing out. Meanwhile, he is trying to figure out why the man is still there and why it seems like the cultivation world is still the same way he had left it 24 hours ago. He concludes that his time in the cultivation world stops after he returns to the present world, and whenever he returns, the time continues. So now he is back again. He is in the time and place that he has left before his transmigration, and it looks like the time in the cultivation world won't return until he transmigrates back. The man with him doesn't understand what he is saying, especially since everything looks like it happened within minutes to him. So Gu Qingshan tells him that he doesn't have to mind about what he is saying. He feels he can't tell the man about the matter regarding Ning Yuechen and Gong Sunjai, especially since the issue isn't yet established and it is still a speculation of himself. His major aim at that time is for him to quickly raise his strength because there is still time for him. He asks the man if there are any low-tier monsters nearby, and the man informs him that there are some low-tier monsters in the nearby forest. The man wonders why he is asking for the location of the monsters, but he tells him that it is nothing special. He asks the man to guard the camp, and he leaves. The man watches as he goes outside of the camp by himself, and he wonders what kind of weird person will risk his life and leaves a safe zone for the monster. Coming outside the camp, Gu Qingshan approaches the low-tier monsters. He kills them. After killing the first target, his soul power increases by 2, and his current soul power is still 5 out of 5. He later gets a system notification that his experience bar is full, his current eco is 10, and his strength has also risen to the 3rd stage of Kai condensation. In the 3rd stage of Kai condensation, his experience point is 0 out of 15, so he goes out to find more monsters to kill so he can level up better. He looks at the stats and acknowledges that it didn't take him too long to reach the 3rd stage of Kai condensation. However, compared to stages 1 and 2, the later stages will require that the experience point he needs to level up be increased. That is because every rise in level will need an immense amount of experience points, so he feels that will be a problem for him since he wants to level up faster. The system notifies him again that he can choose to use soul power to replace his exp so he can raise his level. The system further explains to him that soul power has a possessive trait, and once soul power is used, exp can no longer be used to raise levels. So he should choose what he wants between leveling up with soul power or with exp points. He thinks about the options. Raising levels and comprehension are the same. They can all use soul power, and if that is the case, soul power has become even more important for him. He wonders what soul power is, and the system responds to him that soul power is the fundamental power of sentient beings, meaning they are the origin of the soul. He thinks about that meaning. He assumes that the origin represents a type of limit and power. He eventually reaches to a conclusion as regards the choice he wants to make. He decides to choose to use his soul power to raise his level instead of X points. After he makes the decision, the system notifies him that he has made the decision and he is one more step forward on the road of the war god, so he should keep up his effort. He asks the system what level his current soul power can be raised to. He receives his answer that the 4th stage of Kai condensation required 1 point of soul power, while the 5th stage of Kai condensation required 2 points of power. He has some points of soul power, and he uses it to raise his level to the 5th stage of Kai condensation. The system does as he had commanded, and after he leveled up to the 5th stage of Kai condensation, his soul power remains 2. He is actually shocked that he doesn't need to rely on X points to level up because that is really something that had never occurred in the cultivation world before. He takes that as proof that using soul power to advance is a better choice for him. He hears a sound and sees a monster crawling toward him to fight him. It's a python. A python is considered to be pretty powerful among low-tier monsters. However, with his presence level up, the current him can win against the python. He also thinks he will be able to obtain a lot of soul power after killing the python. He uses secure on his arrow and sends this arrow at the python. He stabs him in the eye, and he dies. After the python dies, he gets 5 soul power, and his current soul power increases to 7. His strength has risen a lot, and his current self should be able to easily shoot down martial masters like fierce tigers. The entire body of a python is filled with treasure, and he can't afford to waste any of them. He goes nearer to the python and starts taking out the important treasure. He begins with the poison breath of the python, and as he deals with it, another python comes out to attack him. He uses secure again to defeats the python, but the python sees through his attacks. The python jumps at him. Unfortunately, it is a close range attack, and it will be impossible for him to dodge. The python attempts to bite him, and he knows the bite contains poison, so it is not good if he gets attacked. He gets poisoned, and the poison starts attacking him. He tries as much as possible to at least end the fight as fast as he can. Unfortunately, his body is very weak, and in the situation that he is in, he isn't on the same level as the python. He needs to use a powerful skill to counter-attack the python. He calls out to the system and tells the system that he wants to comprehend 2 swallows fly together. The system tells him he will have to spend 6 points of his soul power to do it. He spends the soul power, and his current soul power remains 1. He combines the attack, and he sends the fly to the python. He succeeds in killing it, and he tells the python that he has lost. However, the fact that he had used spirit power had quickened the spread of snake poison in his body, and if it continues that way, it won't be good for him. The only cure for him to neutralize the poison is to swallow the snake's gallbladder. Left with no other choice, he takes the gallbladder and swallows it. After doing so, he says that it tastes so terrible that he almost vomits it. Although the taste is quite poor, it is the only antidote for the poison, and if he hasn't done that, the poison would have constituted a lot of problems for him. He thinks of the arrow's trajectory from 2 swallows fly together and says it can change. And since it is like that, it makes the attack unpredictable. He wonders if his problem will be solved if he combines secure, consecutive shooting and 2 swallows fly together techniques. The system sees his thoughts and notifies him that his constructive thinking has enabled the development of a new bow skill, and the bow skill is called the chaotic dance. The chaotic dance is a primary level skill, and it can consecutively shoot 5 arrows in a short period of time using an unpredictable trajectory to attack enemies. He checks the skill to be sure, and he confirms that it is a growth type skill too. He isn't used to that privileges, and he wonders if changing ordinary skills into growth type skills is the true value of the war god ability. He hears a noise. He feels something is happening in the far distance. He tries to run there, and when he gets closer, he sees a lion running towards him. He stops, and he realizes that more and more high-tier monsters are coming out, and that place is no longer safe for him, so he needs to move to another location. He returns to the cave, and the man is very glad to see him. He had thought something had happened to Gu Qingshan because has gone for a long time. Gu Qingshan tells him that they are fine at the moment, but they will soon have some trouble. When the man asks him what trouble, he eventually narrates what he has been suspecting to him. He says he suspects that the demon army is going after the head of the leaders of the human race, and that place they are in will soon become a battlefield. He tells him that monsters are gathering together, and in consideration of their capabilities, it is better they leave that enemy-occupied territory before it is too late. The man feels they can still rely on the concealment formation in that camp to hide a little longer and feels they don't have to go outside the camp where monsters are. Gu Qingshan reveals to him that high-tier monsters can see through the concealment formation at one glance. Hiding is not a long-time solution, so if the man wants to live, it's best he leaves with him. The man refuses to accept. He claims Gu Qingshan has gotten it all wrong. He says that if Gu Qingshan wants to go, then he can go, but he isn't leaving that place. Gu Qingshan tries to convince him again, asking him to understand that it will be too late to regret when the monsters arrive there. The man shuts him up. He says he doesn't want to hear more of the nonsense. Gu Qingshan is saying he claims he has bitterly endured the place for several days hoping that backup will arrive. And now that backup is almost there, Gu Qingshan wants him to leave. He says the monsters Gu Qingshan has fought with have scattered his brain. He says he won't hold Gu Qingshan if Gu Qingshan wants to send himself to death, but Gu Qingshan shouldn't try to sway him into risking his life too. Realizing that the man has made up his mind not to follow him, Gu Qingshan refuses to force him, so he asks that they part ways there. Gu Qingshan leaves. He thinks of the best way he can pass, and he considers that Ning Yuechen and Gong Sanjai's place of death is east of the barracks, so if he evades the east and goes west, he can evade the fight. However, the place he is also looks strange to him. He sees a threat coming, and several arrows attack him as he walks. He activates the chaotic dance. He shoots his arrow to attack his opponent. He sees that it is the tunnel demon. The tunnel demon cab resists elemental skill, and he also has the ability to tunnel into the ground. His arrow hits the tunnel demon, who asks Gu Qingshan how Gu Qingshan knew that was his hiding place. Gu Qingshan realizes his suspicion is right, and it is really the tunnel demon. The tunnel demon is great at killing on a battlefield, and it is unexpected that it would appear in a place like that. Gu Qingshan laughs at the demon and tells him that he is covered in fresh dirt, and the way his hiding spot is completely different from the other surrounding gave him up, and only a blind person wouldn't know he is there. He advises him that he should bring some old dirt from where he had come from so that no one will be able to discover him. He hears several voices responding to him. He feels that there are more than one tunnel demons there. The other tunnel demons appear, and it is indeed a whole squad of tunnel demons. It is a pretty large and rare setup, and it looks like it's an assassination mission. Fortunately for him, the brains of tunnel demons don't work well, so he doesn't have to be afraid, no matter how many they are. He tells them that he didn't tell them up and they can just go back and bring some dirt, and he will wait for them there. He says if he can still discover them after they come back, then their life is his. So the tunnel demon tells him to wait. He watches as they really go back to bring dirt, and he calls them a bunch of iron simpletons. Someone comes out and appreciates him for helping them out. He assumes it is an enemy and tries to fight, but he finds out the man is the frontline General Sacred Sect Supreme Elder Grandmaster of Formation named Gongsun Jai. Gongsun tells him that he doesn't have to be afraid and they are allies. He wonders why General Gongsun is there. He wonders what has changed in his plan. He had clearly gone the opposite so he wouldn't meet the assassination plan, so he wonders why he still met him. Gongsun sees that he recognizes him and says since Gu Qingshan knows him, it will be easy for them to talk. Gongsun immediately opens the 6 trigram concealment formation. The entire place opens, and it turns out to be a Taoist temple. Gu Qingshan commends the great work of the formation Grandmaster and how he had used the formation to hide an entire temple. Gongsun enters the temple and calls General Ning. He tells him to come out that all the tunnel demons have left. Ning doesn't believe that the tunnel demons have left. She says that the tunnel demon's strength is not ordinary. She claims that even they couldn't drive them off, and she asks how Gu Qingshan made them retreat. Gu Qingshan reveals to them that although the tunnel demons are powerful, their mind hasn't developed, so he fooled them into leaving. Ning asks him who he is and how he knows the weakness of the creatures. He brings out his badge and introduces himself as a member of the frontline troops. He claims he often deals with monsters, so he is a little informed about them. She feels more comfortable with him and removes her head cover. He sees that it is really her, the Guerrilla General, Holy Celestial Median, Ning Yuechen. She agrees that it is possible that he knows about monsters because he is at the front line. Gongsun tells him Ning is every male cultivator's dream lover, and he comments that Gu Qingshan will stare into a trance. Contrary to what he feels, Gu Qingshan isn't even looking at Ning. He feels he has underestimated Gu. He doesn't know that Gu Qingshan is actually thinking about how he met them. He feels he had gone in the opposite direction, and all things being equal, he shouldn't have encountered them. In fact, in the records of their death in the previous life, they didn't meet each other, and their place of death was far away from each other. So how did history change? He is of the opinion that the demon army definitely came with preparation, and there is no way they could be evaded by 2 of them for entirely no reason. His best guess is that someone definitely occurred that changed the history. He wonders if it is because he killed one of the demon army's messengers. He feels the death of that messenger may have stopped the army dispatch to have been relayed to the troops of the assassination mission. So he feels it is the lost communication and loss of direction that has changed all the directions. So one way or the other, the person who had changed history is himself. Gongsun asks, what is the jade pendant that is in his hand? And he says that it is the demon army message tablet. He informs them that he had collected it after he coincidentally killed an injured demon messenger. Gongsun laughs. He realizes that is the reason the demon army suddenly stopped their pursuit because there is actually a problem with their army command. He appreciates Gu Qingshan telling him that what he has done counts as him helping them directly. Ning also remembers that the bird carrying that message was injured by her spirit beast, which explains why it fell into the camp. She feels the messenger's strength isn't ordinary and his cultivation hasn't reached the Foundation establishment, so she wishes to know how he killed the messenger. He brings out his bow and shows her. He tells her that it is the bow he had used to kill the messenger. To show them how skilled he is, he uses his consecutive shooting skill to make the attack. When he does it, Gongsun is impressed and says he has great bow skills. He tells them that the demon army will be very fast to react to the issue, and they need to return to human territory as fast as possible. Gongsun sees that Ning has an injury, but she tells him that he doesn't have to worry about it and things can't be delayed, so they should go now. Suddenly, she starts vomiting blood. She almost falls, and they all run to meet her. Gu Qingshan holds her and tells her that she should be careful, but she asks him to take his hands off him, telling him that she is fine. He addresses Gongsun asking him what has happened to Ning. So Gongsun narrates that about a few days ago, the demon army attacked them with poison, and Ning's body was but with different types of poison. Although they had used the detox pill, there was still some lingering poison that hadn't been cleared. He tells them that he also has a detox item on him too, although he doesn't know if it will work or not. Gongsun asks him what item he has, and he brings out the Python gallbladder. Gongsun says the item is the best thing to help the situation and collects it from him. However, Ning doesn't want to accept that offer. She tells him that the demon army may issue another poison assault and he should keep his snake gallbladder to himself so he can save himself instead of saving her. He doesn't care about her, and he doesn't see the need to convince her to take it. He only asks her if she is interested in saving herself or not. He tells her that if she is not eating it, he will have to throw it away. Seeing the way they are reacting to each other, Gongsun knows that Ning has an explosive temper and Gu Qingshan may be shaking to death, so he feels he has to interfere and stop Gu Qingshan before her outburst. The reason behind Ning's irrational reaction is because of what she has experienced with humans that she had trusted. She claims that the people she trusted repaid her with betrayal, while someone she hasn't met before is concerned with her life and death. She reluctantly collects it from him and says she will use it. Gongsun sees that he has predicted them wrongly again. He wonders why everything he has been predicting has been going the opposite since the beginning of that day. Ning is bothered about other things. She feels the young cultivators that approached her from before are all leechers, and she could not depend on them during her critical times. She remembers as they all told her that she had great style and she could ask them for anything. But they all disappointed her. She feels Gu Qingshan is different from them and he really cares. Gongsun, on the other hand, is thinking about how his prediction has failed. He wonders if the lingering poison on Ning's body made her weak. She tells them to give her about 8 minutes. She wants to circulate her Kai and cure her injury. She holds the snake gallbladder on her chest and she sits to cultivate her Kai. Gongsun drags Gu Qingshan away and he asks him not to disturb Ning, and they should set up some defense formation in the surroundings together. Gongsun takes him to a rooftop. He tells him that that place is a place where if there is any problem, Ning can be protected at any time. When Gu Qingshan sees the formation in that place, he also sees that Gongsun is right and he has a well plan to ensure Ning's safety. Gongsun brings out the formation board and activates it. After the signal activates, he tells Gu Qingshan they should be good already. Gu Qingshan is still confused about many things, but he wants to ask about something. He tells Gongsun that he has a question, and he asks why Gongsun didn't call for reinforcement when himself and Ning were chased by the demon army. He tells him that they have sent message charms to the human race before, but they got no response. Gu Qingshan doesn't know why the human race will ignore their people. He asks Gongsun if he thinks the message charms were stolen by the demon army. Replying in a depressed manner, Gongsun tells him they would even find it more comfortable if their message was stolen by the demon army. Before Gongsun finished explaining the situation, Gu Qingshan rightly assumed that the only reason why messages for backup from high-ranked generals like Gongsun and Ning could be ignored was if there were traitors in the high ranks of the human race. Gongsun tells him he is right. He said when they came to investigate, they discovered that there were spies from the demon race within the high rank of the human race. Gu Qingshan realizes that the reason they both didn't receive help from the human race in the previous world until they died it's because of the traitors. However, since he has realized that, he figured the situation is more dangerous for them, so they all hope that the demon army won't come so quickly. The other man remains at the camp. He makes food for himself, and he says the food is good. As he eats, he calls Gu Qingshan an idiot and says there is food and water in the camp and the camp is comfortable, yet Gu Qingshan wants to go out and seek death. He suddenly sees a monster in front of him. He finds it difficult to swallow his food as he looks at the monster. He begs the monster not to kill him, but the monster steps on him till he dies. Ning continues her cultivation. She vomits all the poisons in her body, and she confirms that there are no longer traces of poison inside her body, so her body will be able to recover quickly, relying on her cultivation and the python gallbladder. On the other hand, Gongsun remains with Gu Gongsun. He asks him if he has entered the sect yet and tells him to come to the sacred sect for the annual examination the following year. He asks him to mention his name during the examination because it will be useful. Gu Qingshan accepts the offer and appreciates him. Ning comes to meet them. They ask her if she is fine now, and she tells him that the poison in her body has been cleared and most of her injuries have recovered. She appreciates Gu Qingshan for his help, but he tells her that she doesn't have to be polite. He says she is the main power against the demon army, and helping her is more like helping himself. Gongsun hastens them to finish their conversation. He tells them that the demon army can arrive anytime soon and they should start going. They hear a great sound. The sound feels familiar, and they wonder if it's the demon army. They aren't mistaken as it is really the demon army. Gu Qingshan comments that despite how much they have tried to avoid the army, they have found it difficult to do so. He says the monsters won't even give them a little time for them to catch their breath. Ning is more positive than he is. She tells him that in situations where you meet an unaffordable enemy, then you have to fight them until the end. She brings out her sword to start fighting, and he follows her. He gathers his courage, too, and says they should kill for a road of life. She sees his bow and says it's terrible. She asks him to use her bow and tells him the bow's name is Night Rain, and her father passed it to her, but she will gift it to him. When he collects it, he sees that the aura of the bow is concealed to hide the killing aura of the user. The bow is a very rare one, and it is an excellent weapon. He tells her that since there is a harsh battle ahead of them, he will collect the bow so he won't cause them any trouble by being weak. The monster that has attacked them is the Faceless Giant. It can eat up spiritual power, so it is naturally resistant to elemental powers. The 5 elements formation doesn't have a big effect on the giant. Gongsun doesn't know this before. He realizes that why his 5 elements formation that he had used earlier couldn't harm the giant. Ning decides that since Gongsun's 5 elements of power can't work against it, she will go first and attack it. So they decide that she goes to the faceless giant while Gu Qingshan and Gongsun will face the remaining monsters. Ning activates her wind blade aftermath and also her vibrating slash. Although the faceless giant dodges her first attack, she keeps up with it until she eventually hits it. Looking at the fight, Gu Qingshan admits that Ning's strength is too insane that she can even push back against a monster like that, which is a terrible body type. However, he wonders why she is using saber. If she had trained herself in sword skill, then her power should be greater than that. Gongsun hears what he has said. He enlightens him that Ning also used to be a sword cultivator, but she abandoned the sword and she moved to a saber. He wonders why she will make such a ridiculous decision, and Gongsun tells him she once had a martial brother who was very close to her. However, that martial brother betrayed her, and since then, she has started to dislike sword cultivators. He remembers that he was also a sword cultivator in his previous life too, and he is concerned as to how much dislike Ning has for sword cultivators. Gongsun doesn't make his concerns easier. He tells him that whenever Ning sees a sword cultivator, she would use sparring as a front to beat them up, and she will beat them until they kneel and beg for her mercy. Gu Qingshan imagines how Ning would hit him mercilessly when she finds out that he is a sword cultivator until he would beg her to spare his life. Gongsun tells him more about what he should expect. He says that although Ning's reputation is horrible and widespread, there are still many sword cultivators that are courteous to her. They both say that men are low for them to keep falling for a lady who dislikes them. As Ning keeps fighting with the faceless giant, he has been listening to their conversation about her for a while, and tells them that if they have the time to talk about her, then they should use that time to kill monsters. They immediately remember that they have duties and they can't be idle. Gongsun opens his mountain burial formation so he can fight while Gu Qingshan activates his chaotic dance. After Gu Qingshan succeeds in killing a high-tier mountain quiet flame demonic snake, he gets 20 soul power, and his soul power remains 21. The system tells him that when he kills monsters whose levels are higher than him, the soul power limit will be ignored, and he is welcome to continue challenging strong foes. The fact that he can have 21 soul power when his limit is actually 7 sounds great. The system detects that he has triggered a special historical scenario, and his current conditions are suitable for him to initiate scenarios. So he asks the system to initiate the Battle of the Fallen, and he sees that history is going to repeat itself at that place. The system asks him to break the chains of fate and change the predetermined history. The system takes him to the mission of fate. The mission outline is that Gongsun and Ning are characters who have fallen and have been buried in a deep part of history. Therefore, if he changes their fate, he will be changing the course of history. The object of the mission is that he saves Gongsun and Ning, and if he does that, his reward will be the War God's unique ability, and the system warns him that if he fails the mission, he will also die. He doesn't know how that can work, and it seems like his system is setting him up. He says that he doesn't need the system to kill him if he fails the mission because if Gongsun and Ning die there is no way he would also live, so the only way he can live is to complete that mission. Unfortunately, he can't even interfere in that level of battle. He feels that monsters will keep swamping them, and they will be swamped to death. He really can't think of the best way for him to complete that mission. While he is having these thoughts, Gongsun calls out for him and asks him to help supplement an arrow as another monster has broken through their formation. Gu Qingshan uses his arrow to defeat the monster. After he does so, the system notifies him that he has killed a high-tier monster, Quiet Flame Demonic Snake, and he has gained 20 more soul power, so his soul power is now 41. With his increased soul points, he is of the opinion that he should be able to unlock the War God ability on the Night Rain bow that Ning had given to him. He commands his system to open the Night Rain skill. He sees that the bow can have about 3 skills, and he is impressed by the additional War God skill because it seems like a means of extra self-protection. He has enough points to learn the 3 skills that the bow has, so he asks his system to give him the skills. He spends 40 out of his 41 soul power on the skills. He learns Bombardment, 100 steps piercing leaf, and also Wind Riding. He completes his learning and starts shooting at the monsters. He activates his bombardment skill and kills a high-tier monster blood-drinking demon. He gets an additional 30 soul points. He feels the move's power is strong, but it also consumes a lot of spirit power. The demon army is endless, and no matter how strong they get, if they continue fighting the army head-on, they will surely lose the fight. Ning is also still battling with the faceless giant, and it doesn't look like she has a single advantage against him. So he tries to find another solution. He asks Gongsun if he has any other way of contacting the outside world, and Gongsun tells him the only way they have now is to contact the three saints for reinforcement, and that's the only way they can escape the predicament. The three saints, which are the 100-flower goddess, the mysterious Sky Lord, and the Sorrow Grandmaster, they can actually help them. But Gu Qingshan is concerned that now that they have been surrounded by the demon army, how can they invite the three saints over? Gongsun reveals to him that when they were investigating the demon army, they discovered the divine martial world and set up a transportation formation there, so if Gu Qingshan can reach the transportation formation, he will have the chance to use it to meet the saints. Unfortunately, Gu Qingshan doesn't know what the divine martial world is, let alone where it is. Gongsun informs him it is a ruined world. There are tens of hundreds war god corpses in the divine martial world. He says it is hard for him to imagine how a world with so many powerful figures was destroyed. That strikes a concern in Gu. He doesn't know that there is another world except the cultivation world and the current world. He wonders if Worlds Apocalypse Online Worlds means multiple worlds. Gu Qingshan tells Gongsun that he is the best person to go to the martial world. He says he should take advantage while he covers up for him, and he goes to the martial world. But Gongsun refuses. He looks weak and says he hopes Gu Qingshan will complete the mission for him. Gu Qingshan asks what is wrong with him, and he confesses that, just like Ning, he had also been injured earlier on by the demon army. He is using formation to lock his life force so he won't die for the moment. However, his wound was inflicted by the demon lord himself, so he can sense where he is, and he won't be able to last long if he goes to the marital world because they will find him there. He brings out a ball and tells Gu Qingshan that the ball is the key to activate the transportation formation, and he needs to carefully store it. He claims the ball is the universal formation array, and there are many useful formation on it, although there is a limited number of the formation Gu Qingshan can use, so Gu Qingshan should use them carefully. Before collecting the ball, Gu Qingshan asks Gongsun how long he thinks he can last in that situation, and he finds out Gongsun can only last about half a day, and the formation will collapse after half a day, and he will also die. Gu Qingshan collects the ball and tells him to wait. Before going, Gongsun informs him that he has left people in the martial world. Although he doesn't know if they are still alive or dead, but if they are alive, he can ask them to help him. Gu Qingshan activates the portal, he leaves with it, and he enters space-time turbulence. He then proceeds to the other world and eventually arrives at the martial world, although he doesn't know what place it is. He sees someone hanging in the long tree, and he wonders who the person is. He jumps into the world and looks down and sees several skeletons. He sees poison flying around and also an older man in the midst. He starts crying for help and begging them to help him. His cry gets the attention of the man there, and the man turns to him. He tells him he will give him indestructible powers, but Gu Qingshan refuses the offer. He says that he still has a mission to do, and he can't be swayed by such an offer. His rejections anger the man more. He screams and tells him that it has been 200 million years since a life form came there, but he still allowed the life form to run away. After meeting several hindrances and fighting with the random older man in the other world, he eventually arrived at the divine martial world. When he arrives, he looks around and he sees that the divine martial world is simply a battlefield. He sees the creatures around, and the martial world doesn't look like the same one Gongsun had described to him before he left. He concluded that the martial world had been taken over by monsters. He hears the survivors screaming that they should hold on and not be distracted. He watches as they all fight. Their leader begs them not to mess up their formation position. He sees how coordinated the survivors are, and he assumes they are the ones General Gongsun said he left behind there. He sees that they are Formation's establishment and Golden Core cultivators, and he really needs their help if he wants to achieve the mission he had visited for. He feels he should join them in the fight, but he is worried that his bow's strength won't work against monsters of that level. At that point that he actually needs to remain calm and think about a better plan. If he acts rashly, none of them will be able to survive. If only his sword skill were there, he only needs a sword, and he would be able to enter the enemy's backyard to clear the danger and turn the battle around. But he doesn't have a sword, and he can't use his bow, so the only thing he has is the formation array that gave him, and that can also barely work. He reaches a fundamental plan, which is that he will distract the monster and then try to use the formation to bind them. He starts by using bombardment skills. He screams at the monsters, calling them a bunch of idiots. He asks them why they are chasing him and tells them that they should come to kill him if they think they have the skills. The monsters wonder who he is because they didn't know they had an extra opponent. Even the people he is trying to help wonder who he is and where he has come from. For him to unleash the formation, he has to enter far into the enemy's line. That's the only way the formation can unleash its maximum potential. He has only one chance at it. If he succeeds, they will all live. But if he fails, then he dies. He decides that he will have to have diverse soul power for his legs, since it is better for him to have a faster speed. He does as he has planned, and he feels he has a perfect plan. However, when he approaches the monster, he sees that their running speed is faster than he has anticipated. He activates the formation and opens it to seal them. After doing that, he addresses the people. He tells them that he has been sent there by General Gongsun, but the formation he has used won't last long. He tells them that they should quickly break through the demon army's enforcement while he activates the hidden formation. They are all glad that it is the formation master who has sent help to them, and they can all be saved. Their leader commands them to go. He tells them that they should quickly attack and then will rely on the ice wall's protection for them to advance. He calls the ice wall formation the water, wind, mist, and dirt, while Gu Qingshan holds the formation circle again, and he activates the silent green hidden sky formation. He opens it and defeats the monsters completely. The leader of the survivors comes to appreciate him. He introduces himself as Lang Changxing, and he says he is the legitimate successor disciple of the Alcade sect. He appreciates Gu Qingshan for saving them, but Gu Qingshan doesn't have time for that formalities. He tells Lang that they should skip the appreciation time, and he says he has more important things to say. Gu Qingshan introduces himself as Gu Qingshan and tells them that he has been tasked with a mission by General Gongsun. He tells Lang that he hopes they can help him achieve his mission. And that's how the first part of this man ends. Well guys, if you like this video and you want a second part, comment below with the word part 2. Also subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell and like the video. But most important, leave a comment. Until the next video.